Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody back to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. BKFC KnuckleMania 4 is in the books. There were some fights. A lot of stoppages on that main card. UFC on ESPN was this past weekend. Do we have a new contender-ish name that's now in that light heavyweight rankings? We'll get into that. Looking forward, it's pay-per-view fight week. Some of you may have forgotten, but yes, it is a pay-per-view fight week. This coming Saturday, 301 from Rio de Janeiro, Pantoja versus Erceg is going to headline the card. To help us break all this down, follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. What up, brother?
I'm good, man. Like you said, this is one of those pay-per-view weeks that maybe people aren't quite as fired up as they might normally be for UFC 301, but there are some good fights on it. And man, as much as we love the sport of MMA and as much as we love talking about it, I got to say, I feel like BKFC stole some headlines this past weekend, man. It was a fun fight card. We said it. It had some names on it that people were going to be excited for. We thought, it might deliver some highlights, and it dang sure did. It was a fun afternoon, and gosh, you got a Conor McGregor sighting on there as well. He's now joining up.
Random. I want to hear the particulars about his ownership in it, but let's start with the platinum one, the king of violence. Mike Perry takes out Thiago Alves, TKO at 1 minute into the very first round. There's not a better name for somebody, the king of violence. This guy he's scary. Like, let's be honest, he's scary. I don't know what he is. Is he? I don't know. But he is a fighter, right? And he seems like he's just made to want to hurt people.
It's so true, right? Except for his family, of course, because he's looking out for them. He's a loving father, loving husband. But yeah, when he is in that cage or in that ring, he is looking to fight. Platinum Mike Perry, the king of violence. Man, the run continues for him, and you got to be happy for him to see him, man. If you know the guy, you know how much work he's put into it, and you know how much sacrifice and dedication he's made to get to this point. And it's a perfect pairing, right? I mean, if there was ever a guy that was made for bare knuckle boxing and BKFC, it's this guy. And I love the fact that they're embracing it, right? I mean, they're openly saying, like, this guy is the face of our company, and we want him to be so. And I mean, he is quickly becoming the face of BKFC and the face of the sport. And man, he just keeps lining up big fights. And this was a great performance against Thiago Alves, who, we have a lot of respect for mutually, both of us, man, a lot of respect for Thiago Alves. But he got overwhelmed in this fight and said, look, I came out of retirement for this opportunity, but I'm going right back into it. These savages have moved on beyond me at this point in my career.
His striking and his Muay Thai being Alves, I'm not surprised that Mike Perry won, right? The way I thought it was going to go is he was just going to eventually overwhelm him, second, third round. Now, Alves, if you recall, he was so good in tight. His Muay Thai back in the day was so good, which means his clinch was really good. So I was thinking it was going to be a little more of a dog fight early, but it wasn't. I think he came out, he tasted that power, and then a retreat mode just starts happening. It becomes self-preservation at that point. And I guess when Mike Perry feels that or senses that, now that dog just becomes unchained. He becomes unleashed, and he is going for the kill, and he got it.
I'm with you, man. I really thought this was, kind of Mike Perry's fight to lose, if you will, but I thought he was going to be tested a little bit more. And listen, to be honest, I think Mike Perry did too. I had a chance to talk to him ahead of time, and he had a lot of respect for Thiago as well. And he's like, look, I'm going to win this fight. But he was kind of saying, I know I'm going to get busted up. I know I'm going to bleed. I know, I'm going to be in a battle, but I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to stop. And I know that I can continue pushing and eventually turn the tide in my favor. And he didn't even have to do that, man. He just absolutely was able to overwhelm Thiago Alves. And I mean, Mike Perry has not lost a fight since he left the UFC, man. And you look at the names that he has lined up. Now, granted, it's not MMA, but I mean, in any form of competition,
human combat.
It's still, yeah. I mean, some people think it's even more violent than MMA. So to have, Thiago Alves, Eddie Alvarez, Luke Rockhold, Michael Venom Page, even throw Julian Lane on there as well, to have that as your consecutive victory streaks under this BKFC banner, it's impressive, man. The run that he's on is incredible. And now he's trying to line up some more big fights, whether it be Darren Till or whether it be Jake Paul. I mean, the guy, the world is his oyster, man. The dude is marketable. He's fun to watch fight. He is the poster boy of BKFC.
And it's good to see he's getting paid. I mean, they put the disclosed payout out there. He made $600,000 for this fight. Good for him.
Not bad, man. You gotta like that kind of payday, right? I mean, that's life-changing money, right? I mean, not necessarily that he's done, but I mean, you start making some real changes in your life and some real improvements to your life. And so, yeah, man, getting paid and having fun doing it, it's a perfect marriage, man. It really is a perfect marriage of an athlete and an organization.
I have an exercise that I was wanting to go through, and now it's not going to be applicable for you or for me, but for anybody out there who isn't familiar with one Mike Perry. If you're listening to us, I'm pretty sure you are, right? But if you're not familiar with Mike Perry and you're not familiar with bare knuckle fighting, close your eyes and picture what you would think the best bare knuckle fighter would look like. Then right. Open your eyes and go Google Platinum Mike Perry. And it is going to exact match what you had in your head.
You got to be tatted up, right? I mean, you got to come in wearing the crazy outfits and man, just, I mean, scowling on your face as you go do it. I mean, he's the best.
Talk with the bravado and the slang of how he does it. Like he doesn't care about any convention of anything. He wants to just fight.
And he has become a fighter that you don't want to miss. And I think that's what's so exciting about him. I had a chance to tell him that last week. I was like, man, you've created something that's difficult to do. I think about guys like the Diaz brothers, right? Where like, it didn't really matter what matchup they were in. Heck, it didn't matter what organization they were in. You knew you wanted to watch them fight, right? And I feel like that's what Mike Perry has been able to do for himself. He started out when he left the UFC in this triad combat. I watched that. You know what I mean? Now he's in BKFC. I'm tuning in. I'm watching every single BKFC when he fights. Some of them, I might catch some of the other BKFC shows in highlight form. But when Mike Perry fights, I want to watch that live. I want to have it. I'm telling you, man, at the UFC Apex on Saturday, I saw some screens up with some BKFC going on, even though people were there watching the UFC event live. So, man, what Mike Perry's been able to do for himself with BKFC is pretty spectacular. And listen, what BKFC has been able to do as an organization as well, man, and using Mike Perry as part of that their platform, but they're picking the right names, they're picking the right matchups, and they are continually growing. I mean, this is a sport that not that long ago, people were like, I don't know, man, should this even exist? It was only legal in like 1 or 2 states, and now
Mississippi, baby.
That's right, baby. You know what I mean? You guys will improve anything. It's like my home state of Texas too. We'll improve anything out there. But yeah, no, and now it's legal everywhere, right? You saw at the last Association of Boxing Commissions meeting, they were approving a rule set that can be adopted everywhere, which makes it, capable that it can be legal everywhere. So, I mean, they're growing. And again, we got this mention of Conor McGregor in there as well. I mean, I'm like you that I'm kind of interested to hear the details. Did any cash actually change hands in this transaction, or is this more of, the biggest superstar in combat sports lending his name and getting a piece of that? I tend to think that might have been the arrangement, but we don't know for sure. But nevertheless, whatever the arrangements are, it's a plus. I mean, when Conor McGregor is involved in something, people start talking about it, right? When you know that he can use his huge social media platform to push your brand, I mean, that's a big deal. So this is, financially behind the scenes, I think they're still trying to be profitable. I think they're still in investment mode right now, but man, it feels like they're making some wins along the way in that regards.
Yeah, I mean, the name Conor McGregor attached to anything is at minimum is going to get some views, right? It just at minimum, and at $9.99 a month to stream a lot of bare knuckle. I mean, I don't know the profitability of BKFC. I don't know this. I do know the legitimacy. It's getting there.
Yes.
It's getting to become a real legitimate sport. I mean, I am going to at this year's ABC convention. I'm going to go take BKFC reffing course. I want to yeah. And I don't have any aspirations. Well, I do. I have aspirations to ref at the top levels of every organization in the world. I mean, I do have those aspirations, but I also just, I'm interested. I'm interested. Yeah. It's worth a Saturday to me.
I agree, because I think the referees, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but I'm anxious to hear that now that I know you're doing that, kind of what they say, because it has to be refereed a little bit differently, right? I mean, obviously it's closer, more akin to boxing than it is to mixed martial arts, because it's only the striking arts. But, the things change in the way the strikes are thrown and the way the clinch is allowed and, the way the whole thing operates. So it has to be handled a little bit differently. So it's good that they're offering specialized training in that, man. I'm anxious to hear that you're doing that.
Well, and the cool thing about what I really think is cool about bare knuckle boxing, and so peek behind the curtain I started this line item of business in one of my gyms, and we're teaching kids self-defense instead of just jujitsu or just whatever. I do one day jujitsu, one day wrestling, one day Muay Thai kickboxing. So every day of the week it changes. And so like I get a lot of parents that come in and they just don't understand, right? And so they're like, I'm thinking about getting my kid into boxing. And I have to almost say like, boxing is great. I have nothing wrong about boxing, but what happens if? And they're like, oh. And I go, so let's take sport boxing, like what you recognize as boxing. When they get like this, the referee says, stop. Mm-hmm. No more fighting. I'm going to separate you guys to keep you at a distance to keep the fight going. Because once it gets here and in that clinch, the over-under or whatever, then there's no boxing. It's obsolete. And that's where I love what bare knuckle is doing. They're taking that out of the equation, right? Plum, hold the head. As long as you are working, we are not going to stop you. As long as it's legal. So you can grab the head. You can throw those punches. You can rip to the body the whole time. And as long as one of you is actively engaging in the fight, we are going to let you go. I love it.
I love it too. And I think in that regards, it kind of more closely relates to like Muay Thai, right? Because you think about the Thai plum there and the way that you can clinch and hold and work from that. So I love it. I think it's great. I mean, people are really seeing, look, it is still, I've said it before and I'll say it again, if blood scares you a little bit, you know what I mean? Like it might not be for you because you are going to see more
violence scares you. Like the most, primal form of violence scares you. Yeah, it might not be.
It will. The cuts and lacerations, I don't think there's any more serious injuries. I mean, obviously you're seeing more, more broken hands, but as the studies have shown, it's less than I think we assumed that it would be. I mean, it's definitely easier to break your hands without the gloves in there, but it's not happening as frequently as we felt it would in the very beginning. And again, the deep, serious injuries aren't necessarily there. I mean, it's more of the cuts and the lacerations, which, that heals up quickly. But I dig it, man. It's definitely growing. It's becoming more accepted. And this was a great show. There were a number of great highlights on it. And by the way, too, I want to echo your thing. Boxing is a great workout for sure, man. But you're right. If you're talking about self-defense and everything else, you got to have the grappling in there as well. And you got to be familiar with all those positions. So, but BKFC is doing good things, man. Look, again, I think this event stole the headlines over the weekends. You looked around at the major MMA websites and that sort of thing. The bigger stories that were there were coming out of the BKFC card. And that, listen, as a longtime member of MMA media, look, they're going to put in those feature spots what's getting the most traffic. You know what I mean? What's getting the most clicks. And that was the stuff that was getting the most clicks. A lot of big highlights from that card.
One highlight that, if you want shock value, and I would say BKFC, bare knuckle fighting in totality is shock value. Would you agree with me?
Sure.
To most people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, if you want to take that shock value up to the next level, in one of probably the most exciting minute 33s you will ever watch, Angulo versus Jeremiah Riggs, talking about being able to clinch somebody in which is not allowed in traditional boxing, right? Clinch and rip and rip and rip. Angulo was, Riggs was just putting it on him. But Angulo doing just enough, not taking the clean shots. The crowd is on its feet. It was action-packed for a minute. Minute 33, I said. And then Angulo catches him. And from watching it, you're like, I've reffed enough MMA fights. I've been in enough training wars. I've fought MMA and then reffing them all. You start to recognize saying, if he hasn't put him out yet, it's going to flip, and it's going to flip really quick when that punch out eventually happens. And and then Riggs eventually slowed down, the position in the cage circle switched, Angulo cracks him, and Riggs can't get the 10 count. I tell you, listen, you don't have to go buy the app. You go on MMA Junkie, SureDog, you go on any of them. They are going to have the clips of this first round, Angulo versus Riggs. Go watch it. If you want shock value and you want to be thoroughly entertained for a 1 minute and 30 seconds, go watch it, because hands down, it may be one of the most entertaining rounds of bare knuckle you will see.
So you laid it out perfectly, man. It's everywhere. It's available to see. I don't think that the folks at BKFC are going to be too upset about telling people to go search for it elsewhere, because it's out there. They shared it, and it's worth it, man. It is unbelievable. If you've never been exposed to it, and you've never, I don't want to check it. This might be the one. This might be the the Griffin Bonner introduction or whatever. To be like, dude, go check this thing out, man. It's crazy. It's nuts, and maybe you want to watch more of it, man. So yeah, they did. They went out and threw down, man. That's what any promoter in any combat sport would say. If I can get that out of guys, I'm gonna make some money. You know what I mean? We're gonna leave the fans happy when they walk out of here.
All right, next up. It's just, I can't stress enough how awesome of a round this is. These two warriors, Jeremiah Riggs must have thrown, it feels like 200 punches in the first minute of the fight. Crazy. And for Angulo to withstand that, just to turn the tide. But like I said, you hear it, the commentary right before, he's got to be careful he doesn't punch himself out. And there was coming at times where actually I thought he was going to catch him in exchange every time. I was like, oh, the catch is going to come in the exchange, because Angulo would then throw a hook and barely miss every time. And then this position happened, a straight right hand came down the pike, and it was just, God, it makes my I love violence heart sing.
I do, and I love the fact that you embrace it. I love the fact that you embrace it, because it was an all-time highlight worth checking out. And listen, man, it was a fun look. Ben Rothwell had the big quick win over Todd Duffy. I mean, that was a big one to see Ben Rothwell. He's another guy, honestly, not the flair of a Mike Perry, but a character nonetheless, and just a 20-year veteran of combat sports, but another dude that seems like this might be the right place for him. You know what I mean? At this point in his career, not that he wasn't great in MMA and that he didn't have an incredible career there, but this might be a perfect fit for him. So you had that highlight. You had the weird injury.
Yeah, but really quick on Ben Rothwell. So I said, close your eyes and think of what a bare knuckle fighter would be. Now close your eyes and think of like what you would picture back in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, when they were doing these no time limit boxing matches on the docks in New York City. Close your eyes and picture what that guy would look like. Then go Google Ben Rothwell, because it's like that encapsulates it. Like this guy may have been born to do that as well.
100%, man. And that's an incredible description. And oh, by the way, make it a heavyweight. You know what I mean? Make sure in your mind you're picturing a heavyweight, because he is what a heavyweight should look like, man. He is just a big dude, and he's loving it, man. I've had a chance to talk to him during his BKFC run. He loves it. The weight limit, is better for him. He doesn't have to cut down to 265. He doesn't have to train the grappling and the wrestling. And he's like, man, look, at my age, that's the part that killed me. It wasn't cardio. It wasn't training. Like, I love to train, but those grappling and wrestling rounds, man, they take toll on your knees, on your back, on all those things. He's not having to do that. So he's a great fit. And I was going to say, you had the weird injury, Lorenzo Hunt. Well, I like Lorenzo Hunt a lot. That guy is pure excitement as well. But he got clipped, and when he fell, he had, the shoulder injury there. Gruesome. Was it a shoulder, or I think it was the elbow? Yeah, the elbow, I should say. The shoulder was Todd Duffy. I apologize. You're right. The elbow there. The shoulder was the injury that Todd Duffy had. The elbow, I should say. Bizarre looking there, man. You know what I mean? But again, like, BKFC, you want a little bit of a train wreck, right? I mean, if you're tuning in to Bare Knuckle Fighting, you need a little train wreck here and there. That's what this was. So KnuckleMania 4 delivered.
And I think all the main card were knockouts in the first round. I think maybe one went to the second round. I'm not entirely sure, but like I do have a shirt that I wear a lot of times when I commentate. I wear a t-shirt with a sports code over it and it says I choose violence. Mm-hmm. Like, I choose violence. I love watching this stuff, man. I don't wish anybody to get ultra hurt by it. I want people to get banged up, though, but I choose violence.
Hey, look, these are consenting adults that are collecting paychecks. You know what I mean? It's not somebody that has to defend themselves on the street that wasn't expecting it. They signed up. They agreed to the date. They had the contract. So, no, I love it as well, man. This was a very successful event. The other thing, too, that they really deserve credit for is their pacing. I mean, you talked about the fact that, all first-round finishes, but it's not like they bother filling it with anything, and you see that sometimes with combat sports organizations of all kind. It's like, we had a quick finish. Now we got to slow down a little bit. We got to run this package. We got to, fill some time to stretch this out. And then look, those are TV contracts. I mean, it's done that way for a reason. It's not that they're not aware of it, but I love that BKFC doesn't do that. They're like, let's just go. We got fights. Let's run through it. So, yeah, it's a value, man. You mentioned the price earlier. It's not expensive at all. So they're doing a good job. Like I said, long term, I don't know that they're profitable at this point, but it does seem like they're moving in the right direction to gain profitability. And ultimately, as much of an entertainment product as it is, it's a business, of course. So you got to be profitable in order to keep producing events. I think they're still, like I said, in that investment mode, but it seems like they're moving in the right direction. Legalization everywhere, popularization of it, and again, now that association with Conor McGregor certainly doesn't hurt. So might open some even more doors for him moving forward.
And when Platinum Mike Perry cuts promos after his wins like that, it's just going to gauge more interest. I mean, he's making fun of Darren Till's weight. I mean,
listen.
And angry. He couldn't shut it off. This is a guy who lives that life. He can't shut it off. It took him a while. It took him to the post-fight press conference to kind of dial it back.
Yep. The switch was flipped, right? You don't switch it right back off. It takes a while to wind down. And yeah, cut a promo on Darren Till. And listen, I think that would be a fantastic matchup, man. I think those guys, the build up. I mean, Darren Till is a funny dude, and he's ruthless on social media, and he's ruthless in interviews. That would be a fun build up for a fight, man. It really would.
Yeah. So let's move on really quick. There was a show in the Apex this past weekend. Perez, Nicolas, and Perez picks up the victory. Not really sure what it does anything in the rankings, but here is where I really want to, and I want to get to this fight, because if you guys have listened to this podcast, like I think Ryan Spann has the potential to be that guy. I really do. I mean, his frame, he hits like a truck, and there had been questions about his dedication here and there. Really, by his own account, saying he doesn't train for fights, or he just recently started training for fights. But he got starched this week, and I don't know much about Guskov.
Bogdan Guskov.
I don't know much about him other than this guy came in and just basically ran through him. He ran through him.
Yeah, it was. Look, I like Bogdan Guskov a lot, right? He's new to the organization. He's only been in the UFC for a little over less than a year now. At this point, he's probably going to go into the rankings that get updated this evening. I know that in my voting panel, I added him to it. I mean, a win over Ryan Spann, I think that gets you into the rankings. So he's fun, he's exciting. But I was kind of heartbroken for Ryan Spann, man. I really was. We talked to him going into the fight. And on media day, man, he was in a great mood, right? He was in great spirits, and had taken care of the things training wise that he needed to take care of, and taking care of some things personally in his life that he needed to take care of. He just seemed to be in a great place. And I thought, to be honest with you, physically he looked good. I thought he was, really big. And I thought he was fighting well. I thought he looked like he was kind of mature in what he was doing. So I didn't
down in the first.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I thought, man, okay, here we go. Things are looking good for Ryan Spann. And then Bogdan Guskov just has power. I mean, he's got that touch, because you could see it, man. He clipped Ryan Spann, and Ryan, he got steamrolled at that point. He just Bogdan Guskov has finished every fight. I mean, this dude has got knockout power, and he's aggressive. He's pushing forward at all times. He said, "Look, I know fans don't like decisions. I know fans don't like takedowns." He's like, "I don't even want to take anybody down. I just want to swing and bang. I want to knock people out." And it was rough, man. Ryan Spann kind of after the fight was over, just kind of rushed out of the cage. I won't even say kind of rushed out. He ran out of the cage back to the locker room. I think he was frustrated and disappointed. So it's just such a cruel game, man. As much as we love this sport, it's such a cruel game, right? Because you can do everything right. It seemed by all accounts that Ryan was doing everything right in the preparation process, everything in the gym, everything in his personal life, everything there. But when big dudes are throwing leather, you get clipped, and that can end everything. I mean, you can have the worst camp of your life and go out and have an amazing win, or you can have the best camp of your life and one punch changes everything and you get clipped. So it's a cliche, but it's the truth. The highest the highs, lowest the lows, and we saw it here. Bogdan Guskov, new to the UFC, is likely in the rankings, going to be lined up for a big event next. He's the first guy from his country in Uzbekistan to be represented in the rankings, and he's really excited about that. Meanwhile, Ryan Spann, who seemed like he had everything going for him, it's back to the drawing board. You know what I mean? And it was a tough result to see. Like I said, highs to highs, lows to lows.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Spann, he's got speed, he's got power, he's got precision. I mean, he's got it all, but Guskov just looked like he had a lot more power. And even though we got that takedown in the first one, was controlling the fight, that power showed early too. Ryan Spann, I say this all the time, and not about Ryan Spann, I just say it in generalities. It's like if both guys want to go forward, whoever dictates that forward pressure, they have a huge advantage. And if you watch Ryan Spann fight, I mean, I've been such a huge fan of Ryan Spann back when he was in LFA. Like, I just looked at him, I'm like, this guy's got something, right? Then he gets up to the UFC, win some, lose some, and then I really thought he was taking off. I really did. And I said it right here on this show. But I don't know, like, if he felt that early power and then started second guessing his own skills, because then in that second round, he's moving backwards the whole time. And that's not how Ryan Spann fights. Then he just gets cracked with this hellacious uppercut. I mean, hellacious uppercut. And the simple fact that it didn't flatline him right there is almost remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. Guskov throws everything with power, but I think you picked up on that accurately. You know, it's when you're fighting on the back foot, especially in the light heavyweight division. I mean, it changes. But look, in the main event, it was happening in the flyweight division, right? Alex Perez, to your point, was like really pushing the pace, setting the tone. He was the one that was, rifling off the combinations and the one that was pressing forward. And as Nicolau, who we think of as a guy that'll normally scrap, backed up to the fence, that's when he got caught and flatlined with the right hand. And the same thing happened to Ryan Spann. He's just, when you're moving backwards, you're allowing that opponent to set the pressure. And Guskov, man, he just doesn't throw anything light. He's throwing everything full speed. And, whether he's going to be able to do that in lengthier matchups as he rises up the ranks, if he gets into like 5-round fights, is he still going to be able to have that type of power and aggression late in fights? Remains to be seen. But performances like this are going to get him.
UFC fight. It was his only third UFC fight.
It's amazing. So performances like this are going to get him those opportunities, though. That's for sure, man. I think the guy is already on people's radar. I mean, everybody kind of likes the jokes that he's, he looks like Anthony Smith, and he's embraced it as well and kind of laughed it off. And he had a great line at the press conference, even though it's his second language. He plays along. He was asked about looking like Anthony Smith. He's like, yeah, that Anthony Smith. He's a handsome guy. He's got a really good looking face, man. You know what I mean? So, in complimenting himself, he's funny. He's got a sense of humor, and he knows what fans want to see. So, Bogdan Guskov on the way up. I still think there's a future for Ryan Spann as well. Like, I don't see that performance and say, well, I guess this Spann guy just isn't what we thought he was. It was just a heartbreaker where it's like, man, you get clipped, and there's nothing you can do about it, man. That's this cruel game that we play. Yeah,
I mean, Ryan Spann now coming off of 3 straight losses, being finished in 2 of them, split decision loss to Anthony Smith mixed in that 3. But I mean, we really saw it after that. Cutabella looked amazing. Then he goes and knocks out Dominic Reyes. And that's when we were talking, like, this guy's off to the races. Like, he found something. But as they say, I mean, everybody sees the potential in him, so he's not getting easy fights, and it's almost a way, that with this fight this past weekend it might be in that gatekeeper role now. You know what I mean? It's like, let's see if you're, because I really view that we thought Ryan Spann was going here, and he still may, right? He's been fighting killers, right? But you're not gonna get here until you go through a Ryan Spann or a Ryan Spann type specimen. And that may be, there's always going to be a role for a guy like Ryan Spann. He can have a long career.
He really can. And who knows? Maybe this is the best thing for him. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously, it's tough to say that, right? Because a loss is never the best. Collecting half my paycheck because I didn't get my win bonus is the best thing for me. Okay, well, maybe not the best thing for you. But look, we'll see you again. The rankings will update tonight, so we'll get to see those this week. I brought Bogdan Guskov in. I brought Ryan Spann out of the rankings. You know what I mean? As you said, 3 straight losses. But if he does slip out of the rankings, as it seems he may, at least that opens up the matchups that are available to him, right? Because it does allow you the opportunity of like, okay, now we can get a little bit more creative with the matchmaking because he doesn't have a rank next to his name. We could find some guys and maybe do some more favorable matchmaking, if you will, and let him not fight those killers right now. Let him continue to work on those things he's been working on and let him display it against not necessarily, the top tier of the division and try to work his way back there. So again, there's some guys, they go through these streaks and you're like, man, I guess maybe we just didn't evaluate the guy, or, maybe he doesn't have what we thought he had. And I just don't feel that's the case here, man. Again, I was impressed by the way he looked physically. I was impressed by the way he was handling fight week emotionally. I was impressed by the way he was fighting maturely. I thought he just got clipped here. So this is one of those ones where you hope, and obviously he looks to the leadership of Coach Saif Saud, who is a fantastic leader of men. But hopefully he's got that support system in place, right? Because, man, you get it. Like, guys that are in these positions, sometimes they go down deep, dark holes, man. You know what I'm saying? They start going into depression. They start questioning everything. And hopefully he's got the people around him to just say, hey, man, stay the course. Stay the course. You're still, you're still that talent. You're still that person. And there's still a big future ahead of you. So stay the course, man, because there's still brighter days ahead.
You ready to get on to pay-per-view fight week?
It is pay-per-view fight week, so you got to get onto that. It is UFC 301. Again, I know a pay-per-view that perhaps, look, anything is going to pale in comparison to UFC 300, right? Anything is going to pale in comparison to that. But, this one probably does. This is for the hardcores, you know what I mean? This might be one that you don't pay for, even unless you just religiously pay for everything. You don't question anything. You might not want to pay for this one, but I will still say there are some matchups on here that I'm still very, very intrigued by, and the potential for some absolute nuttiness in the main event, to be honest with you.
Now, listen, I say all that to say this. It's like, we really can't sleep on Erceg. That number 10 by his name. Listen, I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm going nowhere close to that. All I'm just saying is this is a 12-1 fighter fighting in the UFC. Right? He has not lost. Let me go back. His only second pro fight. He has not lost since 2017. Now, is it going to be to the level of competition of a Pantoja? Absolutely not. But the guy still has not lost since 2017. So I haven't seen the odds. I'm sure you can pull it up. I already see you typing away, right? They're not going to be in favor of Erceg. But when you don't lose since 2017 and you're fighting in those way upper echelon promotions, it's got to say something. And truth be told, he just doesn't have the tenure yet in the UFC to be up there. But take that at face value. Has not lost since 2017.
Yeah, and that's huge. You know what I mean? And looking at the lines, it's closer than you might think, to be honest with you. Alexandre Pantoja, I'm looking at minus 190, minus 200 to Steve Erceg on the underdog is like a plus 160, plus 170, which is, look, that's not bad for a title fight of a guy that's just stepping in. That honestly, looking at that line surprises me, because I thought people were going to write off. And I was going to tell you, because we had a flyweight headliner this past weekend. I'm telling you, we asked both guys. We asked Alex Perez. We asked Mateus Nicolau, hey, what do you think about next week? And both of them said, look, I'm picking Pantoja, but if you're writing off Erceg, you're making a mistake. This dude is good. And what an incredible story it would be if he was able to step in here and win the title this early in his UFC run. So it is a more intriguing fight. It's a fight that I understand people might be a little irked to be paying for on pay-per-view, but it's a fight that has the potential to be a very good fight, and the fight that has the potential to be a historic fight.
I do want to get into the pay-per-view, or the perception of the lacklusterness of the pay-per-view right now. Granted, 98, 298, 299, 300.
The run was crazy.
Monster. The run that they've been on, right? But 301, all right, it really doesn't have the name value. And truth be told, I think everybody goes off of, is it a good fight card or not, by the name value. Pantoja, we know the guy's a savage killer. He's a big name value to me. But then, you have to almost throw a Jose Aldo in there. It was kind of like we need something, right?
Yep.
And so if you didn't know, Jose Aldo's on this card now as a co-main event, just FYI, right? So, but the question asks, you got Anthony Smith on the card too. There's another name, right? So there some names on there, right? I don't understand the business of this, and maybe you can help explain of like, is it the way a calendar works out, contract with ESPN Plus that there has to be X amount of pay-per-views, once averaging once a month or averaging once every 3 weeks, whatever it is, because this really could be a great fight night card.
Yeah,
and it is a pay-per-view, which adds that added level of pressure onto it for them to deliver. And so I'm just curious of why, coming off of 300, bam, we were here, that now we're going to here perception-wise, right?
Yep.
Is there a method to making this a pay-per-view as opposed to something else?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're spot on. There's contracts in place with ESPN about the number of pay-per-views, the number of fight nights that have to be delivered, the number of shows on ABC. I mean, all that stuff's contractually obligated to be done. And so, you have this date set aside on the calendar, and that's when you're going to go on pay-per-view. Now, if you didn't maybe have so much of the rest of your year set out the way they do, maybe you could make the change and say, well, look, we can drop this one, but then we can add one back in later, and I think we're going to be okay. I mean, look, I can tell you in talking to the UFC brass, the matchmakers, they understand sometimes what their best efforts are versus, the other fights where they're like, hey, this is just what we can put together. I mean, unfortunately, there are availabilities and, who can be going on certain dates and who can fight. And it's not as easy as, rolling out a schedule for the NBA, for instance, you know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, you guys got to go. No, the Memphis Grizzlies don't say, yeah, but man, I was trying to take off. We got a kid being born, and I wasn't ready. And right. You got Sean O'Malley saying I don't want to fight out of the country. So there's a lot of moving parts and stuff. But the short answer to your question is yes, they've got to deliver on a certain number of pay-per-views, per contract, and so that's why this was established as a pay-per-view and why it's going to stay a pay-per-view.
All right. Well, with that being said, you got the card in front of you. Give me somebody to watch on here. Outside this main event, which we said there is a sleeper. The guy hasn't lost since 2017. A lot of the experts in the division, a lot of the fighters are saying, do not sleep on this guy from Australia, right? Even though he may not look very imposing, he doesn't look necessarily like the tough fighter guy. Do not sleep on him. But he is ranked 10th in the division. Before you get to something else, how? I know the answer to this, but let's educate people. How is a 10th ranked fighter fighting for the title?
Well, that goes to exactly what we're talking about in terms of availability and injuries and that sort of thing, right? So, yeah, Steve Erceg was the only guy really that made sense, that was coming off a win, that could make the schedule, that would make the trip. And so, there were certainly guys ahead of him in line, but, Pantoja's already fought them or they were injured and not ready to go. And so this was the fresh matchup available, and the phone rang. And in this business, man, they say in the NFL, right? Sometimes the best ability is availability, and that's where Steve Erceg was, right? You know what I mean? He is dangerous. He's better skilled than I think most people are giving him credit for. If you haven't watched him fight, I mean, I get it. He hasn't been in a lot of featured fights. He hasn't been in the UFC very long, but he was available, and he said, hell yeah, I'll take that call. I know that I just got here, which is crazy. I know that it's been, a year here, but I'm ready to go. I'm 4-0, and I believe I'm ready to go, or 3-0, I should say, and I'm ready to go. So let's do this. And he stepped up and answered the call. So now he's in the main event.
Yeah, I mean, debuted back in 2023 and rattled off two decisions, one knockout of Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell is always a tough fight, right? Knocked out Matt Schnell. Okay, now moving on. Give me somebody to watch on here. I got one.
Look,
I got one. But
first of all, let's say, we did kind of gloss over it a little bit, but Jose Aldo being back, the Hall of Famer, the legend, and doing it in Rio against Jonathan Martinez, who, by the way, I'm going to be honest with you, when this matchup was announced, I was like, wait, Aldo's coming back? I thought he was done. I was like, okay, dope. I want to see Aldo fight in Brazil. And they said he's fighting Jonathan Martinez, and I was like, ooh, like, that's a tough fight, man. That's no gimme fight for Jose Aldo by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm excited to see the King of Rio back, and to prove my point, I had not looked at the odds at all, and I just did. Bro, Jose Aldo is an underdog in that matchup. Jonathan Martinez is the favorite, so the odds makers are giving the same value and respect to Jonathan Martinez that I did when the matchup was announced. So that is impressive to see. I think,
well, just to your point, Martinez has rattled off 6 straight wins in the UFC. He hasn't lost since Davey Grant back in 2021.
Dude, and he's dangerous, man. It'll be interesting to see Jonathan Martinez in the spotlight down there. Jonathan Martinez is a striker by nature. I mean, obviously, well-rounded everybody at this point is practicing everything, but he's got great striking, devastating leg kicks, which Jose Aldo does as well, of course. He was probably the one that was most known for that for a generation. So stylistically, it's a great matchup. Jonathan Martinez is absolutely scared of speaking on camera. It's crazy. The guy goes and fights in a cage for a living, but like interviews, like scare the living daylights out of him. He's like public speaking is his fear. So for him to be in the co-main event of a pay-per-view in Brazil where they're going to be screaming at him and yelling at him, I'm anxious to see that this week. So keep your eyes on that. It should be a lot of fun. But as far as somebody to keep an eye on, Vitor Petrino against Anthony Smith. Man, Anthony Smith, God bless Anthony Smith. That dude he'll fight anybody, right? I mean, this dude will literally face anybody. You got this up-and-coming kid in Vitor Petrino, undefeated, as I said, 26 years old, devastating. Did go the distance with Tyson Pedro last time out, but that's just because Tyson Pedro is an absolute dog. That's right. What you absolutely want to keep your eyes on. And Anthony Smith is, a veteran that is capable of shocking anyone. But, I mean, this is a guy that's probably – destined for the rankings sooner rather than later. So this is a big test for him. And I'll throw another one out there that I'm really excited about. Again, I get it. I understand why people are questioning the quality of this pay-per-view, but the main card, I'm actually intrigued with everyone. Michelle Pajeda and Ihor Porteria could be a very, very, very fun fight. But how about Paul Craig and Kyle Bahayo? I mean, Kyle Bahayo looks like a guy that's destined to be, in the rankings and climbing them very soon. So, yeah, man, I'm excited for this main card, all of them, to be honest with you. But I like Petrino as a potential breakout performance from him, and I think Craig and Bahayo could be a lot of fun.
All right, so I'm going to go all the way down to the early prelims, and the only reason that this one is really sticking out to me is because I got to see him firsthand. Mauricio Ruffy out of the Fighting Nerds, right? And he fought on Dana White Contender Series this past summer. I was the referee in the cage. And I remember just thinking like, dude, this dude is cracking the power that this guy is hitting with. And he takes out Magomed Aliyev in Dana White Contender Series. Magomed Aliyev, part of Team Eagle, Habib Nurmagomedov's team, training with those killers. And Ruffy gets a TKO finish late in round 3. This guy is part of a team now that had multiple Dana White Contender Series winners, given multiple contracts, and they're fun to watch. Just keep an eye out for this guy.
That's a team on the rise for sure, man. That's a team on the rise, and that's a guy that, as you said, impressed. So he very much good. And look, going against Jamie Malarkey. Jamie Malarkey is a scrapper. That dude just goes. He's as durable as they come. He's go out there to swing, and man, that's a great one. If we're looking on the early prelims, I'll cite as well. How about Ishmael Bonfim and Vince Pichel as well? Ishmael Bonfim looks to be an absolute savage, right? I mean, this dude looks like, capable of finishing fights in a number of different ways and very, very exciting. Coming off a loss, but it was a loss to Benoit Saint Denis, who was. Oh
yeah, your second MMA fight. Let's or your UFC fight. Let's go with Benoit Saint Denis.
Fighting that guy, so that should be a lot of against Vince Pichel, who Vince Pichel is just a fighter, right? I mean, when your nickname is From Hell, right?
And get a stash like that,
and you got a stash like Vince Pichel rocks. I mean, you got to back it up. So Vince Pichel is a lot of fun as well.
Who does have a win over Jim Miller, by the way?
Yes, he does, and he's a huge underdog in this one. And I think he's taking it personal. And listen, man, Brazil. I almost pulled the trigger on going down there for this card, but the flights were just a little bit too expensive. The crowd down there is so fun, man.
What is the term that they say, like, some kill them?
Ou vai morrer, which is you're going to die. You're going to die, which is amazing. And,
they are going to be screaming that from the rooftops when the King of Rio and Run This Town Tonight hits, and he comes walking down. Walking down the aisle, and that, like, listen, that is going to be special. What do you think about Jose Aldo coming back? Just in generality, in totality, because the love that we in a loss. Now, on one hand, for him to kind of be like, oh, a lot of people saying he didn't have it that night. Now against Davila-Sheely, mind you, fighting for the title next, who will be the favorite going into that O'Malley fight, right?
Yep.
Didn't get taken down once. Henry Cejudo got taken down, I think, 3, possibly 4 times in that fight.
Yep.
Jose Aldo didn't get taken down once, and he just got held up against the cage and pinned against the cage. So on that aspect, I'm like, yeah, let's give him somebody who isn't Merab Dvalishvili and see what happens in a retirement fight in his hometown in Rio de Janeiro. I love all the aspects of it from that regard. But do you get 2 swan songs?
Listen, part of me is not happy to see Aldo back. Like I thought, the tears that he shed at the Hall of Fame ceremony and, seeing him walk out to his music one last time was amazing, right? And I think about the loss of Merab Dvalishvili. At that point, the loss to Merab, you kind of realize, okay, Aldo is never going to be a champion again. But I will say this.
But we didn't know Merab was Merab either.
Well, a lot of people did, and I did. So I didn't.
Not to take down Henry Cejudo 4 times in a fight, Merab.
Not that kind of. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like a situation where, gosh, the fall off was so dramatic that this guy can't ever step in there again, right? And how about the fact that, look, man, he's actually taken some boxing matches in the meantime. So it's not as actually he's just been on the couch the whole time. He's been training. So I do. On the one hand, you don't want the greats to come in and have those bad nights. I always hate to cite it because it seems like I'm picking on the guy, and I'm not, because he's an all-time great. But Anderson Silva, the way that his career ended was not fun to watch anymore. You know what I mean? And I think there's a generation of fans who don't realize just how amazing Anderson Silva was at his peak because all they saw was the tail end of it. Oh, the GOAT. I mean, he's in that conversation anytime you have the conversation. So there's part of me that's scared, that doesn't, seeing Aldo's rise from the WEC. I mean, amazing. I mean, this guy was an absolute terror in the WEC and then made his way over to the UFC and it always carried himself with dignity and class. And it's just, I mean, an absolute incredible representative of the sport, a man of the people. I mean, so revered in his home country, refuses
rags to riches story.
Rags to riches, but refuses to be that guy, the riches. He's still a man of the people. You know what I mean? He lived in his old neighborhood for years and years until finally, they were like, bro, it's a security concern. You got to get out of here. You can't, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, but why? This is my neighborhood. This is who I am. So I love Jose Aldo. So there's a part of me that's scared, but I think the circumstances are right here, right? I mean, he's the king of Rio. It's in Rio. It's in Brazil. I think the UFC needed him here, and I think that probably helped factor into the equation. And I'm sure maybe they threw an extra bag of money or 2 up on the table to get him to do there.
Yeah, he ain't dropping the bag.
No, but this is the right circumstances. And look, and it's an opponent that it's going to be fun. Jonathan Martinez is the younger man. He's an incredibly skilled striker as well. And so we may be in a situation where it's like they go toe-to-toe, and the younger man is just a little bit faster and is able to land a little bit cleaner. And that might happen. But I think that's better than, going in there against somebody that's just going to grapple with him the whole time. I think it's going to at least allow Jose Aldo to be Jose Aldo. Does that mean that he's necessarily victorious? Well, at 37 years old, I don't know. So, yeah, there's a part of me that's just like a little bit scared that I don't want a great to suffer a devastating loss at the end of his career. But the guy has earned it. And as you said, the loss to Merab, it's Merab. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's any shame in it. I think the guy, and before that, he had beat Chito Vera, Pedro Munoz, Rob Font. I mean, it's I'm excited for this fight. I'll be honest with you. The reason I wanted to go down there was to be there for Jose Aldo's last fight. You know what I mean? That's the reason I wanted to go. And the flights were just a little too expensive. And I was like, I can't drop it. But I have that much respect and love for Jose Aldo as a fighter and a human being that I wanted to be in the building for what seems like it's going to be his last fight. So I didn't make that trip, but I will definitely be watching it on pay-per-view on Saturday night.
When did this fight materialize?
Gosh, it hasn't been that long. It was a pretty recent addition to it. I want to say, the last month or so? It wasn't.
Yeah, I was going to say like 2 weeks ago. Like it was and it was kind of like, I don't know. It hasn't been much publicized either.
Well, there was so much on UFC 300.
300 at the time.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you're right. So let me see when it was added. Let's see when it was that. It had to be like a month though.
Okay. Because I just remember kind of like prepping. You know, I'll look weeks out of what's coming up, and I'm like, oh, Aldo.
Yeah, it was 6 weeks. They had like March 16th is when it was announced. So 6 weeks.
Wow.
It did. So yeah, it was a recent addition, but not so recent. Like, oh my gosh, we're desperate. We got to get you on there right now.
yeah, well, 301. I'm anxious to see what kind of metrics it does because John Morgan has turned me into that kind of nerd now, where I'm looking at things like that. But I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, look, this will be one of the lowest performing pay-per-views of the year. There's no question about it. This will be one of the lowest performing pay-per-views of the year, but I'm interested. I mean, I watch them all. I get them all anyway, so it's not like my incremental sale is going to matter or not. But I think if you do watch it, it's one of those ones that I get it. You know, this is one of the ones I say, hey, if you want to go catch this one at Buffalo Wild Wings, you know what I mean, where you don't have to pay the $75. Now, unfortunately for me, if I sit down for 3 hours at Buffalo Wild Wings, it's going to be more than $75 anyway. So I don't actually save any money by going and doing that. But you know, if it's one of those you want to do that, or if it's one like, you know, maybe you're a guy that normally like, you know, watches it at home by yourself, but you're like, you know what, man, let's reconnect with some friends and hang out. Maybe maybe everybody chips in on this one. You know, we go old school and everybody throws a couple bucks down and brings over a 6-pack or whatever the case may be. I get it. Like, I understand in this one. But I think there's going to be some fun fights. I think the atmosphere is going to be great. It always is in Brazil. I think Rio de Janeiro is one of the best places on earth to catch a fight, man. The crowd there is just passionate. They're knowledgeable. They're incredible. Rio is a fun city, man. If you ever have a chance to go to Rio de Janeiro, it's a blast, man. I love hanging out, sitting in a plastic chair as the ocean breeze comes in and drinking a couple of ice cold originals. The exchange rate ain't bad. Once we got down there, I mean, it's like 5-1 right now for the ice to the dollar. So it's like everything's cheap down there. So I mean, I'm sitting here now regretful that I didn't pull the trigger. But I think it's going to be a good fight card on Saturday. Now, I still think it's going to have some entertaining matchups. And again, I'd tune in just to watch Jose Aldo, if I'm being honest with you.
With the cost of brews down there, it's basically costing you money not going now.
It's so true. It's like $1 for a beer down there. I'm up here paying full price, man. I basically, man, yeah, now that's the way I should have looked at it, man. I really made some poor investment choices here, man. This was terrible. I did not manage my funds efficiently.
Roger that. All righty. Anything else on tap this weekend for you?
That's it, man. It's kind of a light week because there's not, you know, it's weird with the UFC not being here and me not traveling. So overall, keeping it kind of low key this week and getting caught up on some stuff around the house. You know how it is. I know you know how it is. Your season's coming to an end in the NBA. You got to start catching up on things, right? I kind of feel like we don't get an off season in MMA, as you well know, and you've now joined the fray of not getting an off season, but a not fight card in your town and not traveling to a fight card. That's basically as close as we get to an off season. So I'm catching up on bills and, you know, paying all that stuff and doing everything around the house. How about you? Anything? I'm sure now that the season's over, you're just kind of sitting around the house all day, not doing anything, right? Just chilling all the time.
Yeah, exactly. I've got nothing on my plate. Not to mention, like, okay, my wife is like uber pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So we're having a within the next three weeks or so, and everybody always.
Did you tell her not on a Monday? Did you tell her not on a Monday?
Oh, she knows better. She knows that. I don't have to say that. Now everybody says like, "Oh yeah, how's your wife doing? How's mom doing? How's mom feeling?" Why don't they ever ask how we are feeling? How we are doing? I mean, they're milking this pregnant thing, right? Because, oh my gosh, like
you're handling everything right now.
Mentally, I am. I have to take a lot. I take it from the kids. I take the abuse from the kids. I take it from the wife, who I love more than anything in this world. And thank goodness I got my dog. Thank goodness I got my dog. All righty.
Hey, let them know. That's why you're going to be watching UFC 301. You're like, hey, I need everybody to leave me alone right now for the next 6 hours because I have work to do. This is important. I got work activities.
And these are the most important early prelims in the history of the UFC.
Can't miss a single one.
I have to start watching it at 3 p.m. And I'll be here until midnight.
Just letting you know. All right. Look, Alessandro Costa and Kevin Borjas are walking to the cage right now. I need you to step out of my man cave because I'm doing it. No, but my mom,
I'm just having fun. My wife is amazing mother. And if you're watching this, baby, I love you.
I never thought about this. So I've got one. So one and done. Right. So obviously it was very easy towards the end of pregnancy. Like, hey, I'll take care of everything, honey. Don't you worry. You relax. Like, I know that it's difficult for you right now, physically, all that. I'll handle everything. But what that didn't entail for me when it was just the first pregnancy is, oh yeah, I'll take care of these other 2 kids and everything that goes along with it while I'm also working full-time in multiple capacities to support this family. And yeah, you just chill for a little bit because I know that's what you need. I didn't have to do that. So now that you line it out like that, I think about the responsibilities I had. And if I had to add in everything more, that'd be tough.
I love you, baby. All right. Well, good stuff. Hey, fun week. BKFC delivered. Like over the top fight card, fight night in the Apex, but had some big moments in it. By the way, I gotta say this. I hate watching people on the internet and Twitter that are like bashing these fight night cards. Like, how the hell do you think we get superstars, ladies and gentlemen? A bad night of watching MMA, it's like pizza, all right? Bad pizza is still good. Is still pizza. You know, MMA that you don't know these guys' names yet, it's still MMA. They're still the highest fighters in the world. Give the UFC a break. They have to produce a damn show every week. Conor McGregor can't headline every single Saturday. Give him a break.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, man. I get it. Look, your attention level is going to be a little bit different too, but I liken it. It's a different time. I mean, I know a lot of us are hardcores for years and years, and we grew up in the age when there were like 6 cards a year. And so, man, we just poured over every detail of it. But now a lot of these events are like a regular season game. You know what I mean? It's like any other pro sports franchise. Like, you could be a big Grizz fan, but you need to tune into like every game, every night. Baseball, 162 games. Are you so big of a fan of your team that you watch every single game? So I get it. But you don't start saying, man, look at this ridiculous schedule that the NBA is putting together. I can't believe this with Major League Baseball. So I'm with you on that one, man. These people need opportunities. And by the way, if you take away these fight cards, you say, man, if they just had less fight cards, the quality of the cards would be better. Well, guess what that means? A whole bunch less opportunities for athletes to compete. That means a whole lot less paychecks going around, a whole lot less guys and gals that could be on the UFC roster. So I get it. If you're going to say, hey, listen, the card this week, I think I'll just catch up on the highlights, or I think I'll watch this one the next day, maybe fast forward through all the breaks, whatever. Fine. Yeah, but I'm with you, man. The trashing of it, it annoys me to no end, man. This is how the business grows.
Yeah. I get that you want bangers every week, and you want the bangers of the people that you need. But a lot of times these cards deliver.
By the way, this past week's cards
are fighting for their opportunity. That's why people are loving the Dana White Contender Series. They love Dana White Contender Series because they're fighting for their opportunity. Guess what? Just because you got that UFC contract doesn't mean it's guaranteed. It doesn't mean all this. These guys are fighting for that opportunity in the Apex every week, and it's pizza. I'm still here for it. Bad pizza is still great pizza.
And I thought the pizza was pretty good this past week. Even if the pizza on paper was like, I don't know, we'll see. It delivered, man. There were a lot of finishes. How about that Uros Medic knockout of Tim Means?
We got 3 extra cheese, and we didn't even order extra cheese.
I'm telling you, bro. They brought some crushed red peppers and everything. It was great.
Yeah. So, anyways, with that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.